The tragic mishandling of Ashton Fellence's brain by the Children's Hospital of Wisconsin is more than just a procedural mistake. It represents a devastating failure of both scientific stewardship and human compassion. Ashton was not just another patient. She was a medical pioneer. Diagnosed with Canavan disease at a young age, she became one of a small group of children who received an experimental gene therapy intended to extend her life. That therapy, administered when she was just 3 years old, did not offer a cure, but it did give her 10 more years than most with her condition. Her life, and especially her death under hospital care, presented a rare, invaluable scientific opportunity. Her brain could have revealed how the pioneering treatment interacted with human tissue over decades. That knowledge is now lost forever. This loss cannot be overstated. In the world of experimental medicine, especially for rare diseases like Canavan, every data point matters. Human brains, especially those altered by gene therapy, are almost never available for comprehensive postmortem analysis. Ashton's case was unique, not only because she lived far beyond the typical prognosis, but because her death occurred in a hospital setting where the conditions for proper preservation were ideal. Dr. Paolo Leone, a renowned researcher in the field, had long planned for this moment. The preservation of Ashton's brain would have allowed researchers to analyze the long-term impact of the gene therapy, study how the treatment spread or remained localized, and assess whether the experimental genes integrated into the surrounding tissue or degraded over time. These are fundamental questions in the field of neurogenetics, questions whose answers are now permanently out of reach. The failure was not a simple clerical oversight or an innocent logistical delay. It was a breakdown that spanned months, during which clear red flags were raised and ignored. The hospital's reasoning that the previously signed consent forms were out of date is bureaucratic at best and negligent at worst. Consent had already been documented. The researchers had prepared the materials and were on standby. Still, the hospital stalled. Emails were ignored. Holidays and staffing transitions were cited as excuses. And then, with no final warning, the brain, half of it, was simply discarded, while the other half, the injected half, was eventually sent to the research facility far too late. In medical research, timeliness is everything. Tissue degrades. Data is lost. The very integrity of a sample hinges on how it is preserved in those early hours and days after death. And yet, those in charge failed to act. The statement from Children's Hospital of Wisconsin, in which they express how profoundly sorry they are, rings hollow in the face of such systemic failure. Expressing sorrow does little to repair the irreversible damage caused not only to the Fellence family, but to the broader scientific community and to future patients who might have benefited from the findings. Ashton's parents trusted the system. They believed that by donating her brain, they were turning their daughter's suffering into hope for others. Instead, they experienced a second loss, a betrayal that has added new layers of grief to their mourning. From a research perspective, the consequences are even more dire. This was a once-in-a-generation opportunity. As Dr. Leone stated, it wasn't just about Ashton or Canavan disease. It was about the broader application of gene therapy to neurological conditions. This was a specimen that could have influenced medical understanding for decades, or even centuries. Its destruction is not only a setback in scientific terms, but a moral failure, one that undermines public trust in the organ and tissue donation process. If families believe their loved ones' contributions will be mishandled, they may be far less likely to donate in the future, further compounding the challenge of conducting high-quality medical research. There is also a troubling lack of transparency and accountability. For months, the Fellence family and Dr. Leone were kept in the dark. Communications ceased. The institution ghosted a lead researcher in the field of Canavan disease. Only after a direct confrontation did the truth come out that the brain was accidentally disposed of. But how does one simply throw away a brain that was clearly marked for preservation and critical research? There are protocols for handling donated tissue. There are labeling systems, storage guidelines, refrigeration and transport timelines, and chain of custody documentation. For all these systems to fail simultaneously indicates either a shocking level of disorganization or a culture of indifference. Neither is acceptable. Ultimately, this is a cautionary tale about the fragility of medical progress, the dangers of bureaucratic inertia, and the profound responsibility institutions hold when families entrust them with something as sacred as a loved one's remains. The felon's family has now hired legal representation, not to seek profit, but to ensure that no other family is ever put through the same ordeal. If compensation is awarded, they plan to direct it toward Canavan research, turning a horrifying misstep into a renewed push for discovery. But even that noble intention cannot undo what has been lost. Science does not move forward on apologies. It moves forward on data, on preserved tissue, on the hard-earned gifts of those who give their bodies to research in hopes of helping others. When a hospital loses a brain, it loses more than a specimen. It loses the future. Has the hospital done enough to truly earn back the trust of grieving families and the scientific community?